It was Christmas Eve, a night meant for warmth and celebration. Our house glowed with colorful lights strung along the roof and the decorated tree that stood proudly in the living room. Inside, the scent of gingerbread and cinnamon filled the air. My mother and sisters Anna, 15, Sophie, 12, and little Mia, 6, were busy hanging ornaments and tinsel. Mia hummed Christmas carols as she worked, occasionally asking for a hand to place decorations just out of her reach. My little brother Nathan, 8, wore a Santa hat and raced around the house, making everyone laugh with his pretend gift deliveries. In the garage, my father and I were working on the snowblower. Snow had been falling heavily all day, covering the driveway with a thick blanket. We needed the machine to clear it before it became unmanageable. I crouched beside the old machine holding a flashlight while my father adjusted the mechanism. A sudden knock at the garage door startled us both. My father opened it, revealing Aunt Clara. She was wrapped in a heavy coat, her face pale and her hair dusted with snowflakes. "Bill's car broke down," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "He's waiting for a tow truck, but I decided to walk over. It's not far, but..." Her words trailed off as she looked back over her shoulder. I could have sworn someone was following me. Her words sent a chill down my spine, though I tried to brush it off. My father ushered her inside without a word and locked the door behind her. Once inside, Aunt Clara was greeted warmly by my mother and sisters. They handed her a mug of hot cocoa and she settled near the tree. Despite the festive atmosphere, Clara seemed uneasy. Her eyes kept darting toward the windows as though expecting to see something or someone outside. The evening carried on. My sisters placed the final decorations on the tree, while Nathan and Mia played with the little train set that circled its base. I couldn't help glancing out the window, occasionally unsettled by Aunt Clara's words. Later, my father and I went outside to shovel the driveway. Snow was still falling, but it was a peaceful, quiet night. Or at least it should have been. That's when I saw him, a figure standing at the edge of the street, partially obscured by the swirling snow. The man was tall, wearing a dark, hooded jacket. He wasn't moving, just standing there watching. I nudged my father and pointed toward the figure. He tensed immediately, his expression hardening. He motioned for me to go back inside. I didn't argue. I hurried to the house, locking the door behind me. My mother noticed my uneasy expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, stepping closer. "There's someone outside," I said, my voice low. "Just standing there." Her face tightened, and she moved to gather my siblings into the living room. Aunt Clara, sitting by the fireplace, stiffened. She looked at me, her earlier fears returning. My father returned soon after. His movements were deliberate, as he checked the locks on every door. Nobody spoke, but the atmosphere in the house had shifted. The joy and excitement from earlier seemed to have faded, replaced by a tense silence. I decided to check the living room again. That's when I noticed something strange. The presents under the tree, neatly arranged just hours before, were scattered. Several of them had been ripped open, their wrapping paper shredded. Decorations from the mantel lay on the floor, and faint footprints trailed from the window to the hall. "Dad," I called out, my voice trembling. He rushed over, and when he saw the mess, his expression darkened. He quickly directed everyone to go upstairs. Once in the master bedroom, we locked the door. My mother held Mia close while Nathan clung to my arm, asking in a whisper if Santa's helper had come early. I didn't know how to answer him. Minutes dragged by. Every creak of the house made us jump, and the muffled sound of the wind outside felt like it was carrying whispers. The knock at the front door startled us all. My father peered through the upstairs window and relaxed slightly. "It's the police," he said. 2 officers entered the house, their flashlights casting beams across the disarray. My father explained what had happened while they inspected the back door, which had been forced open. "We'll search the area," one of the officers said. "Stay here and keep the doors locked." They left, and we waited in tense silence. About 20 minutes later, they returned, dragging a man in handcuffs. He was tall and scruffy, his clothes filthy and damp from the snow. His wild eyes darted around the room as he muttered incoherently. "This the guy you saw outside?" one officer asked. My father nodded. "He didn't get far," the officer said. "We found him hiding in a shed down the street. He had a knife and some stolen items." The man was taken away, and the officers assured us that extra patrols would monitor the area. Despite their reassurance, the festive mood of the evening was gone. We huddled together in the living room, the once bright glow of the Christmas lights now feeling hollow. By Christmas morning, the snowstorm had passed, and the world outside looked calm and serene. Inside, however, the memories of the night lingered. Though we opened our gifts and tried to carry on with the holiday, the fear of what could have happened remained with us. That Christmas, the meaning of safety and family became more real to us than ever before, and it was a lesson we would never forget. It was Christmas time, and I was 30 years old, a single mother to my 6-year-old son, Liam. We lived in a cozy house passed down from my grandparents, nestled in a quiet, peaceful neighborhood with mostly older residents. Life here was calm, and I still live in this house with Liam today. That holiday season, Liam and I decided to go shopping for Christmas gifts. We visited a small local shop known for its festive decorations and unique items. The shop was cheerful. Twinkling lights decorated every corner, and Christmas music played softly in the background. Liam was drawn to a display of toys, his eyes lighting up as he explored. While I browsed for a gift for my dad, I noticed the shopkeeper glancing at me. At first, I thought it was just casual observation, but his gaze lingered for too long. I continued browsing, keeping Liam close, but I couldn't help but feel his eyes on me as I moved around the store. When it was time to check out, I approached the counter, and the shopkeeper smiled a little too enthusiastically. "Do some holiday shopping?" he asked. "Yes, just picking up a few last-minute gifts," I replied politely. "You're a lovely woman," he said abruptly. "It must be hard being a single mom, especially around the holidays." I froze for a moment. I hadn't mentioned I was a single mom. How did he know? I responded with a polite but brief, "It has its challenges," and handed him the money. "You know," he continued, "if you ever need help, I'd be happy to lend a hand. You and your son seem like a wonderful little family." I didn't reply. I just grabbed my bags, held Liam's hand tightly, and left the store. As I walked to the car, I glanced back and saw him standing in the doorway, still watching us. That evening, after putting Liam to bed, I stayed up wrapping gifts in the living room. The house was quiet, and I was beginning to feel more relaxed. But then, the doorbell rang. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I went to the door and called out, "Who is it?" "It's me, the guy from the shop," came the reply. I felt a rush of concern. "What do you want?" I asked firmly. "You left something behind," he said casually. "I just wanted to return it." "I didn't leave anything," I replied. "Please leave, or I'll call the police." There was a pause before he said, "You're overreacting, miss. I'm just trying to help." I didn't answer, and after a while I heard footsteps moving away. I peeked through the window and saw him walking down the street. The next day, I called the police and reported what had happened. They assured me they'd keep an eye on the neighborhood, but I remained on high alert. That night, I double-checked every lock on the doors and windows, determined to stay cautious. Around 11 p.m., the doorbell rang again. This time, I didn't approach the door. I immediately called the police, and they arrived within minutes. The officers searched the property and found the man hiding near the side of the house. He claimed he was just passing by, but the police weren't convinced. After questioning him further, they took him into custody. Later, the police informed me that the man had been following me since I left the store. He had parked near my house and waited for hours before ringing the doorbell. Although the situation was unsettling, I was relieved that the police acted quickly and the man was caught. Liam and I were able to enjoy Christmas without further disturbances, though the incident left me much more cautious. Now, every holiday season, I make sure to be extra mindful of my surroundings. While the experience was unnerving, it reminded me of the importance of staying vigilant to protect my family. Liam and I still cherish the magic of Christmas, but I'll never forget the lessons learned that year. I am a banker, and like most people, I've been trying to make the most of the holiday season, despite my busy schedule. This year, I wanted to add a little extra cheer to my home for Christmas. But between long hours at the bank and managing expenses, I decided to look for decorations on Facebook Marketplace to save some money. One evening after work, I came across a listing for a beautiful inflatable snowman. It was huge, festive, and looked brand new in the pictures. The price? Surprisingly low. The seller, a guy named Rick, offered an even better deal when I messaged him. He'd trade it for a set of old tools I'd been trying to sell online for weeks. It felt like the perfect opportunity. Rick seemed friendly in his messages, and he assured me the snowman was in excellent condition. He suggested I come to his house so he could show me how to set it up. It sounded reasonable, and he lived only about 20 minutes away. The deal seemed simple, and I figured it wouldn't take long. The next evening, I loaded the tools into my car and drove to Rick's address. His neighborhood was unfamiliar, but seemed decent enough. Modest homes with Christmas lights twinkling on porches. When I pulled up to Rick's house, though, something felt off. The house was darker than the others on the street. No lights, no decorations, just a dim porch light flickering weakly. A beat-up sedan was parked crookedly in the driveway, and the lawn was patchy with overgrown weeds. I hesitated for a moment, but reminded myself that not everyone decorates for Christmas. Rick came out as I parked. He looked like his profile picture, a middle-aged man with a scruffy beard and a baseball cap. "Hey, thanks for coming," he said, his voice friendly enough. "The snowman's out back. I'll show you how it works." I grabbed the tools from my car and followed him around the side of the house. The backyard was eerily quiet, with no lights except the faint glow from a street lamp down the block. The snowman was there, just like in the pictures, sitting in a heap on the ground. Rick plugged it in, and the inflatable slowly came to life. It looked just as good as it did in the photos, and he explained how to secure it and keep it lit. Everything seemed fine until I heard the sound of another car pulling up. I turned to see an old pickup truck parked at the end of the driveway, blocking my car in. A large man stepped out, wearing a stained jacket and heavy boots. Rick's demeanor changed instantly. "That's my buddy Pete," he said, his tone too casual. Pete didn't say anything. He just leaned against his truck, watching us with a cold expression. My gut told me something was wrong. So Rick said, his voice suddenly less friendly, about the snowman. "How much cash do you have on you?" I frowned. "Cash," we agreed on the trade. Rick scratched his beard and glanced at Pete. "Yeah, but Pete and I were talking. This snowman's worth a lot. Maybe throw in $200 with the tools?" My stomach tightened. "I don't have that kind of cash," I said firmly. We agreed on a trade. Pete pushed off his truck and took a step closer. "Are you sure about that? Bet you got a wallet in that car of yours." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't about the snowman. It was a setup. I forced a nervous laugh. "Let me check my car. I think I might have some cash in there." Rick and Pete exchanged a glance, then nodded. As casually as I could, I walked back toward the front yard. My heart was pounding, but I didn't dare run. When I reached my car, I didn't hesitate. I jumped in, locked the doors, and started the engine. Rick and Pete realized what was happening and sprinted toward me. Pete was faster, slamming his hands on my hood, yelling something I couldn't hear over the engine. I threw the car into reverse, tires screeching as I backed into the street. Pete dove out of the way as I shifted into drive and sped off, my heart racing. I didn't stop until I was several blocks away in a brightly lit parking lot. Once I felt safe, I called the police and gave them all the details. Rick's address, a description of both men, and what had happened. The dispatcher was calm and assured me they'd send someone to check it out. A few days later, an officer called me back. They had visited Rick's house and questioned him. He tried to claim I'd backed out of the deal, but the police weren't buying it. Turns out Rick and Pete had been involved in several other shady dealings on Marketplace. They'd lured people to their property before under the guise of trades or sales, only for things to take a dangerous turn. I was lucky to get out of there unscathed, but it left me shaken. Christmas is supposed to be a time of joy and generosity, but this experience was a harsh reminder to always be cautious. From now on, any trades or sales I make will happen in public places, and I'll never go alone. That snowman wasn't worth the risk, and I'll never forget how close I came to finding out just how far Rick and Pete were willing to go.